In this episode of X-Town the Podcast, we talk about public comments during public meetings of elected officials and the recent changes to the Greene County Commissioners' rules and guidelines surrounding those comments. Some of it I like, some I love, some parts I just think are bullshit. How we doing, Xenia? Welcome back to X-Town, the podcast. I'm your host, Josh Long, and I'm the founder of Xenia's Word on the Street, where you can find local news, events, and views about our community, by our community, at xeniaword.com. All right, so this episode, I would like to talk about public comments, particularly public comment portions of public meetings. And why do I want to talk about this? Because in the headlines recently, the Greene County Commissioners have made some changes to their public comments, rules, and regulations or policies surrounding when people can speak and how often they can speak and etc. at the meetings. And this is not a new topic. This topic comes up a lot in the community, especially if you're following community groups and things on Facebook. Public comments at public meetings of the city council, of the township trustees, particularly recently at the Xenia Community School Board of Education. All these elected bodies during their regular public meetings provide a time during the meeting to allow for the public to address them. The commissioners, we're going to go through this line by line here, have recently made changes to their policies. Each of the three bodies that I particularly know their policies quite well, which are the county commissioners, the city council, and the Board of Education, each of them have very similar policies, but yet do differ at some fundamental levels. For example, they all allow public comments. They all allow them typically at the beginning of the meeting, and they do set time limits on that. Now, some of them may require you to sign in before the meeting. Others just allow you to show up at the podium during that time on the agenda. But regardless, there is a public comment section. The county commissioners recently changed theirs, and I thought we would kind of go through these 5 or 6 bullets on their comment sections and just talk in general about their policy and in general about public comment sections as a whole. First, I think it's important to kind of define what this time is. The public comment section of a meeting is designed to allow people to have time to speak to their elected officials. It is not designed to be the only time you're allowed to speak to a commissioner or a councilman or a Board of Education member. We can, of course, email them and call them and try to get appointments and stuff with them. They, of course, when we email or call, have no obligation to email back or set appointments. Most of the good ones will, but even then, they can be overwhelmed by just the amount of email and things that come in. Typically, these boards, like the commissioners, are 3. I think there's 5 or 6 Board of Education members, 7 council members. And there's anywhere from 25 to 50,000 people, depending on actually, the county commissioners probably have over 100,000 something people that they are elected to represent. So they cannot possibly respond to every phone call and every email. And when I was on city council back a few years ago, I tried my hardest to respond to emails. But towards the end of the tenure there, I did start to dawn on me that just because, and I do this in my personal and my business life too, that just because someone sends me an email, that does not mean that it warrants, deserves, or even requires a response. Just because I send an email to someone doesn't mean that I get on their agenda, that I get a piece of their time. That's true for even my personal life. And if someone knocks on a door, like a guy coming to the door selling something, and they knock on a door, just because they knock on a door doesn't mean that we have any obligation to listen to them or any obligation even to answer the door. But at the public comment section of these meetings, it is designed for you or I or anyone to come to these meetings and say something that we want to get off our chest. Now, there are some guidelines around that, like we can't be rude and cussing and make false accusations. But it's an opportunity to say something, to support something, talk about a cause, an event, get something off your chest about a local policy or whatever it is. Now, in almost all cases, though, locally in these meetings, the elected body is not going to respond to your comments. They're going to allow you to speak them. may give you some guidance on who to speak to outside the meeting, but it's not the meeting is not designed to find solutions just because someone decided to show up at the last minute and make a complaint. It allows you and I to state what we would like to say, even ask a question, and make the connection with who we can speak to outside that meeting. Because meetings do have agendas. These are not open-ended, keep the elected officials there all night where we want to sit here and talk or complain about something. These are business meetings. And the people attending these business meetings are not slaves, are servants. They're our residents that we elect there, and our city, our county, our township employees. And this is a meeting, just like a business meeting, just like a personal meeting. They have an agenda, a time it starts. And we should respect the fact that they really shouldn't have to sit there for 6 hours to listen to one particular issue. If an issue is so important that we would like to bring a herd of people to make a public comment at a meeting, the best approach at public meetings is to ask to be placed on the agenda and have time. Now, if they deny you the opportunity to speak and the opportunity to get onto a future agenda, then yeah, public comments are probably that right outlet for you to come in and say your piece with respect to time. And that's why time limits are placed. And we're going to talk about that. So let's just dive in here to the county example and use this county example, not to pick at the county, but just to use these bullet points to talk about in general public comments. So the first line of the Greene County Board of Commissioners meeting guidelines for public comments says, electronic devices must be silenced or turned off during any board commissioners meeting. Pretty typical. They don't want to hear your ringtones, your text messages. They ask you to silence them or turn them off. This does not mean that you are not allowed to record meetings. Supreme Courts have ruled that public meetings are allowed to be audio and video recorded by residents. It's just saying that you cannot be disruptive to the meeting in that effort. Pretty self-explanatory. So the next line is, before the meeting begins, a person intending to speak at the regular meeting of the board during the public comments portion of the meeting must print their name and address on the sign-in sheet located in the meeting room. This is true for the county commissioners. I'm fairly sure it's true for the Xenia Board of Education too. When I was on council, we didn't really require this. We'd ask for you to sign in, but we didn't require you to sign in. There's two portions of this. One, signing in allows the chair of the meeting to know how many people intend to speak and can plan accordingly in the meeting. And they can go down the list to make sure everybody's called who wants to speak and gets to speak. He can even maybe do some planning that if 4 or 5 people here speak on one topic and 4 or 5 people speak on another topic, that we ensure that we put those people together so that the continuity of the conversation flows well. I've never quite personally understood the address portion of it, though. Why they require your address. They say it's for the record. And you didn't see me just make the air quotes, but I did. Air quote, for the record. And I guess I can kind of understand you want to make sure you know who that person is. But there is no requirement at these meetings to be a resident of the county, the city, or the township you're speaking in. So capturing the address, I don't understand the purpose of it. But the county's not unique in doing this. The Board of Education does it. The City Council also does it. There might be a legal precedent set in the past that maybe someone with a law degree can speak of. I've even been to a council meeting where someone was so against the idea of giving their address to the public like that they just lied and gave a wrong address. So I think that it probably does more harm really than anything. All right, the next bullet point in here, speakers will be called for their time at the podium in the sign-in order. That's the county commissioner's rule. I can kind of understand that. Make sure everyone gets selected and down the list. The next line says, at the podium, the speaker is asked to speak clearly and begin by providing their name and address for the record. Again, you just provided your name and address in writing, so I don't know why you're restating it for the record and what that record and why you need to keep that record, but regardless. And then they direct their comments to the board and the county administrators. That's very important. This is a policy. This is part of this policy. Basically, they're saying, do not come up there and address the audience. You're there to speak to the commissioners. This is true at the city council meeting and the Board of Education meetings too. People have a hard time with this. One, that you're not up there to have an exchange one-on-one, an individual council member or an individual employee. If you want to have a one-on-one exchange, schedule an appointment with them and talk with them. You're there to address the board as a whole, the council as a whole, the commissioners as a whole. And you're there to talk to them. I do kind of show some frustration in regards to this when people come to these public meetings to make a public comment. And really what they're doing is they're just using that opportunity of 3 or 4 minutes on camera to address the public. And then they're not really addressing the commissioners. They're not asking questions. They're not trying to understand something. They're just trying to make a point, and they want to get it out to the audience. So that's what the public comment section is not. The public comment section is not a TV camera. It is not a public address system. It is not a stage. The public comment section of the meeting is an opportunity to address and state facts, opinions to your elected officials as a whole. It is very effective in that way. You don't have to go meet with 7 individual council members. You can come to a meeting and share your opinion about something they're going to vote on or something that they're considering, and all 7 are going to hear your message at one time. Okay, so the next comment on this, or bullet in the Greene County Board of Commissioners meeting guidelines for public comments, is public comment is limited to 3 minutes for each person. When the speaker is notified they have reached their time limit, comments should be immediately concluded. Additional time may not be donated to a speaker by another member of audience. That last sentence is, if you've ever watched Congress, either at the state or federal level, the elected representative will say they'll yield the rest of their time to a colleague or something. And you can't do that. Each person who comes to a meeting has 3 minutes to speak. It used to be in the past at some meetings where if a group of 10 people showed up, they would just pick one person to speak for them, and everybody would give them their 3 minutes. So then that 30 minutes of total time is that one person is speaking, and the commissioners do not allow that. They allow you 3 minutes to speak. Now, we can get into a lot of debate. Is 3 minutes enough? Is 5 minutes enough? Is 6 minutes enough? Why do we even have time limits? To be blunt, I understand better now than I did before I got on council, or before I served on council, why we have a time limit. When an elected representative goes out and gets elected, let's say city council member, because that's what I'm most familiar with, they are all essentially volunteering, asking to be elected, volunteering for this role. They do get a couple $1,000s a year, but they're not employees. These commissioners, these city council members, they attend multiple meetings a month. They also have jobs and families. And meetings have set agendas and time frames when they start, and we should be respectful for when they end. So these time limits are there to ensure that the meetings do not get out of hand and go on for 6, 7, 8, 10 hours. Not only to respect the elected officials or the city employees who are in attendance, but to respect the people who are there watching, or who may be on the agenda to speak or have an issue considered. So there's nothing more frustrating. Let's say if you're there to get approval on a zoning issue, and because you want to put a pool up, and you're asking for a little variance to move it a little closer to the fence, and you fill out your application, you submit it to the board, and then you have to sit there for 2.5 hours while people come up to the public comment section and talk or complain about a local business or whatever that their issue is. That person who was on that agenda took the time to fill out the paperwork, get on that agenda, and they're on that agenda to get something done, and they want to get their pool put in. So limiting the amount of time that this comment section can go on is out of respect for the people watching, the people listening, the people in attendance, not just the elected officials, but the audience too. I just asked that we're consistent with it, and the county policy is consistent here. So public comments are 3 minutes. The council meeting, the chair kind of gets to pick the limit, but typically it's 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And I just ask that they're consistent with it, that if we allow 3 minutes at this meeting, it's 3 minutes at the next meeting, 3 minutes at the next meeting, that we don't give someone else 5 minutes and then someone else 2. Just consistently put a limit in place like the county has here. All right, so the next line says public comments shall not include obscenity, commercial advertising, defamation, or slander, and shall not violate the Ohio Revised Code provisions concerning disorderly conduct or disrupting a public meeting. Seems pretty straightforward. The public comment section is not there for you to go and cuss out the fucking council. You know, times I was on council, I heard that word. Pardon me if you don't like that word. It's not there for you to come every week and advertise your business. There's other outlets and means you can do that. That doesn't mean that you can't come and say, hey, I'm new to town. I'm starting this business. At the council meetings, I don't know how the county's going to interpret this. It doesn't mean that you can't come and say, look, we're holding a nonprofit charity walk. We just want to invite the public. They don't say you can't do that here either. And of course, you can't just get up there and lie. That's the hardest time when I was on council, that at times public will come in and with all the best intentions in the world, but still slightly ignorant or very ignorant on the subject matter that they plan to speak on. And even to the tune where they will slander someone else, slander a public employee, slander an elected official, slander someone else's family or loved one, when they don't have their ducks and facts in a row. And that is not, the public comment section is not the place to spread lies. I absolutely agree with that. And disorderly conduct, I mean, the public comment section this is not your meeting. You're not the chair. You have your few minutes to speak. I've seen people come to a meeting and out of protest refuse to sit down, refuse to stop speaking. That's awesome. I'm sure you feel good. There's not really that many people watching that on TV, so you're not really getting your message across as clearly as you think you are. And in fact, you may even be hurting your own message by being just disorderly about it. All right, the next policy on this, the board reserves the right to end the total period for public comments at any time. This is a line of the county commissioner's policy that I just flat out disagree with. And why I flat out disagree with this is because in this thing you say they must sign in. In this thing you say they must get 3 minutes, or they do get 3 minutes, and you define what they can or cannot speak about. So if 100 people show up and they've followed this policy, they all get their 3 minutes. I think that the county commissioner should have the ability to say, if you're this topic is too large. Let's say if everyone's coming up here to speak against the zoning issue and there's 100 people who want to speak against it, I think the county commissioner right in the beginning of the meeting can say that this group is too large for this meeting. It warrants scheduling a special meeting, or it warrants scheduling time on the agenda for the next meeting. I can understand that discretion, but just to sit here and say, look, after everyone signed in, after I get their minutes, if we just get tired of this, we're going to stop. We're going to cut you off. That I don't agree with, but they do have that line item in there. And I know a line item in here just gives them the right to do it. Doesn't mean they might do it or will do it. But still, when I read through here, that kind of set the hair on the back of my neck up. All right. The other bullet point says public comments will be limited to the matter on the board agenda for that meeting. This is another item on this public comments section that I absolutely 100% disagree with. I think giving them the ability just to cut the meeting off when they want is wrong. And I think limiting it only to agenda items is absolutely wrong. Because what the county commissioner sets that agenda. So what if they never put on the agenda the one item that you want to speak with them about? Then you will never have the opportunity to voice your opinion at this meeting. I think that's wrong. I think that there should not be limits to what the topics are. I think they should be limited I think they could be limited to the scope of the county commissioner's role. Like coming to a city council meeting to bitch about the school system would be outside what the city council can do. So I think it's within reason to say that the items being spoke about by the public should be concerning the city of Xenia and the city and the roles of the government and the body that's there. That's just not used as a platform to come and complain about your neighbor who doesn't cut their grass enough. But just to say that you can only come and speak with us today if the item you would like to speak about is on today's agenda, I think is absolutely ridiculous. And as a matter of fact, I think it's absolutely stifling. And I bet that wouldn't even hold up if someone wanted to challenge it at a court level, because the state of Ohio has guidelines concerning public comments about allowing that a time to address elected officials in public meetings. And this one, I think, is just their way of ensuring that someone does not surprise them at a meeting on a topic that they're not ready to hear about. I doubt the county commissioners are going to listen to this podcast, but I would absolutely challenge that public comments should be limited to matters on the board's agenda for that meeting. The other item on here says that questions or comments on non-agenda topics may be submitted in writing to the county administrator for consideration and response at a later time. Questions raised during the public comments portion of the meeting will not be addressed. So let's break this down in two. One, they said that you can only come and speak about things that are on our agenda. And two, they're saying if you want to speak about something that's not on the agenda, write me a note and send it to the administrator. He may or may not listen to it. Now, first off, the county administrator is an employee of the county, not an employee of the residents. They're not elected there. So to have a middle person between me and my elected representatives to be able to get onto an agenda to come speak at a meeting to where I address my elected representative is bullshit. So I'm just going to calm down for a minute. It is just plain BS. So questions raised during the public comment portion of the meeting will not be addressed. I absolutely 100% agree with that. And I understand that just because someone from the public shows up at a meeting and asking a question, it does not mean that we have to answer that then. Those elected officials may not know. Those elected officials may be blindsided. They should not be put on the spot to respond. You should be able to come and address the question. You should be able to ask who the appropriate person it is to address that question to and get a response so that you can go offline. But to come in here and say that if I want to talk with my county commissioners as a whole, that I have to submit comments or questions and submit it to an employee of the county, and that employee then will consider if you get that opportunity, and if they respond, it will be at some later time. It's just bullshit. That's a lazy way out. Okay, going on from here. Citizens' comment at a regular board commission meeting is not to engage in dialogue or debate an issue with the board or county administrator. I agree with that. Just because you show up doesn't mean they have to enter into that debate with you. Matter of fact, when there's actually specific issues and votes that come up about zoning and things, there's typically public hearings, and public hearings are the opportunity to offer your opinion and hear both sides. Those are the more appropriate locations to have these debates. The purpose, and the policy goes on that says the purpose of citizen comment is to provide an opportunity for citizens to address the commission concerning pertinent items on that agenda. I disagree with that. I don't think that the public comment section should only be limited to pertinent items on that agenda, because that means the elected officials are then by themselves. Matter of fact, the line above says the county administrator is going to do it, is determine what's pertinent. Maybe I want to come to the county commission meeting to talk to you about something that you say is not pertinent and I think is. I should have my 3 minutes to address that politely, respectfully, say my piece, and go sit down. You're not awarding these people this opportunity. Actually, reading through this, I would even bet that most people would not go to a county commission meeting. They will quit coming because even if they show up anyways, because they will not have the opportunity to speak unless it's pertinent to the county commissioners and it gets on their agenda. Goes on and says commissioners will not act on comments except to direct the county administrator to receive a matter if needed for discussion at a later date. I agree with that. That you should really stop the back and forth because they can just get out of control quickly. I think it's very appropriately. My friend Mike Engel on City Council does a very good job at desk during public comments. That if someone does have a comment or question, he will make sure that the right person in the room will take that and run with it to get you the answer you need. It may not be that night, may not be tomorrow, but connected with the right people to get you that answer. Because believe it or not, the elected representatives at the commission level, Board of Education, or the City Council, they don't have all the answers. I mean, in fact, they themselves have to go to other people in the city government to get their questions answered too. The policy goes on and says regular, special, and work sessions are open to the public. That's nice of them. That's actually a law, not anything they can control. The state law. There's an opportunity for citizens' comments during regular sessions only. Exec sessions are closed to the public. Again, both of those are codified state codes. There's at times that boards and commissions will schedule work sessions. This is time that they've set aside to ensure that all 7 city council or all 3 commissioners could be in the room and work through a specific issue. They're there with one specific issue. During a work session, a special session, you have to be very specific on why you're there. You can't just show up and talk about random issues. So I absolutely understand that. And in fact, it's state law. It's nothing the county commissioner is going to do. They're just kind of restating it here in their policy. And it goes on here to close out saying this policy is established to provide a guideline for public comments at regular meetings of the Board of Commissioners. Guidelines may be set aside or amended during a meeting to address any issue that may arise at the discretion of the board and county administrator. I don't know. Whenever I read this, it's like a CI, cover your own butt kind of rule. Basically, they're saying, look, the public, you're going to follow all these rules. But if all three of us decide that we're going to ignore this today because the people coming are speaking in favor of us, we'll weigh these guidelines. These are just guidelines. I understand why it's in here, and I understand that's really going to be up to the person chairing the meeting, and if this gets out of line or not. But reading through it, it just sounds what's the word? Disingenuous. It just doesn't sound very straightforward. It does kind of sound authoritative. And it goes on to say public hearings may be the subject of different procedures. That's just letting you know that when we have a public hearing, that's typically a legal matter, and they will have a policy to determine how a public hearing is held, how people get sworn in and give testimony and stuff like that. So I've been reading along, even cussed a little bit because I get pretty heated about topics like this as being a voter and have been on an elected body. I can understand that there were many meetings that I knew because I heard through the ramblings and the word on the street that people were going to come to a council meeting and speak about something, and I just wasn't in the mood to hear it. I understand that, but as elected officials during these public meetings, these 2 or 3 public regular scheduled meetings, that is just part of the job, that you come and listen at the public comment section about what the community is saying. I understand that most people only come to the public comment section when they're kind of pissed off about something. There are times where people are coming just to speak about an event, and there was a few times that people even come to thank us for a job that we done or a vote that we took. And there's a couple gentlemen that will come to council meetings. I know politically may not even to agree with the body of a whole, but they come just to thank the elected officials for volunteering their time to do that. So public comments, it's kind of a tricky subject. There's some laws that govern it. I can respect having a section in the beginning of a meeting. I can respect having some time limits there. I can respect requiring the speaker to be respectful. I can respect not having a debate or back and forth with commissioners or council members during that time. I cannot respect that a guideline like the county commissioner's policy here is written that basically says this is what we want you to do unless we say different. This is the time we're going to give you unless we say different. These are the items that you're allowed to talk on unless we say different. That comes off very authoritative. I just think it starts to blur that line and cross it. And I hope that as they mature into these new rules, these guidelines, and other bodies in our community are listening to them and watching, that we can ensure that things are uniform and that the public is placed first above the egos of any chair that may be elected to that board. All right, Xenia, I am out of here. Again, this has been X-Town, the podcast, venting and talking about public comment sections about meetings. But I also invite you to come over to xeniaword.com to read local news, events, and views. There's a lot of great information over at xeniaword.com about local events coming up. I'm recording this in December. It is a time of the year for holiday bazaars at churches and schools and cutting down Christmas trees and Xenia lights at Shawnee Park. And you can get all that details and information by going to xeniaword.com or following us on Facebook at facebook.com/xeniaword. Again, my name is Josh. Have an awesome week, Xenia.
Hey, what is this?
Xenia's word on the street.